Okay, we're live. Hey guys, how's it going? How's your day? How's your week going, actually? Alex, how's your week going?
It's good. It's hot in Atlanta. It's in the 90s. I'm very warm. I miss my Seattle summers, but I'm hanging in there.
Nice. I have no idea what that means in English temperatures, so I assume it's warm. It's quite warm here today too. And Bill, how's it going? How's your week?
Going good so far. Just listening to the sweet sounds of thousands of cicadas in our area here. It's crazy.
Nice. All right, let's get going. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your cost optimization at AWS. I am your host, Stephanie Gooch. Today with me, my co-pilot is Alex Head, and our awesome guest is Bill Pfeiffer. How are you guys doing? We're all doing well. Everyone hopefully can hear us and see us. So today we are getting into the cost and usage report, or commonly known as the CUR. And I know Bill from working on the CUR Query Library, which I am wearing the swag, which some of you have seen in our well-architected session a couple of weeks ago, and I'll link to that in the chat in a second.
Still very, very jealous of the swag. I
you need to commit a query.
Swag. I'm working on it.
Shout out to Andy, who is in the process of getting a hoodie. He wants to commit a query so he gets a hoodie. So there is goals there. We are going to be talking about the CUR, obviously, and so Bill is an expert in this and knows tons about it. So we're going to get into details about what it is, how to get started, and what are some resources that you can use to help you get started. So Bill, why don't you introduce yourself and give us your 1-minute origin story? So your background and what you do at AWS.
Sure. So my name is Bill Pfeiffer. I'm a senior technical account manager at AWS, and I've been here for a little over 2 years. Prior to joining, I was at managed service providers, in all different roles, both technical leadership, systems engineering, systems administration. And after joining AWS, I focused on management tools and then got into the world of cloud financial management because the customers that I worked with had such a big interest in cost optimization. So that's kind of where I got started on working with all these different tools and kind of getting in the trenches with the customer on actually using the tools and most specifically cost and usage report.
Awesome. Nice. So in, one sentence, how would you describe what the cost and usage report is, Bill?
It is the most detailed raw billing data that you can get for all of your AWS cost and usage at an hourly level that includes resource IDs. So it's really going to give you, the nitty-gritty details about all usage across all accounts within your organization.
So perfect description. Exactly. It could have been probably what is very close to what is on the Amazon website, if even a bit nicer. So what was your first kind of experience with the CUR? Was it being a customer more than, or was it kind of working at Amazon? Like, what was your first kind of getting into it?
Sure. My first gig getting into it was at Amazon. And it was because my customer, they were really, rapidly growing, and they were bringing on tons of different business units. So they had a lot to digest as teams were migrating into AWS, and their spend and their usage was increasing, and they were trying to build formal processes around how to do like charge back and show back to their teams. And they came to us and said, how do we do this, right? Cost Explorer is great. Everybody uses, everybody's familiar with it, but, we need to be able to go a bit deeper. And we also want the ability to get like a simple report. And we started to look at, proposing cost and usage report as the solution to help them with that.
Nice.
So it was kind of like a learning journey for both the customer and myself.
Learning on the job. Nice. What about you, Alex? Would you have been a customer, I assume, when you first started using CUR?
Yes. When I first used the CUR, I printed it out
Are you
lots
serious?
of pages.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God.
Trying to figure it out. I'm a very visual person, and I was, given like where I was working, RIs were given a single invoice for each purchase. So if you purchase like 200 reserved instances, you got 200 invoices. And so it was my job to figure out how those lined up to the cost and usage. And it was very like new in the world I was working in. And so I printed it out, and I'm a sleepwalker when I'm in a stressed mode. And one night I slept walk and laid out every page of the CUR on my floor and woke up the next morning to it all perfectly lined up. And so my first experience working with it was dreaming of the CUR, basically.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's heroic to print that out. That's awesome.
Killed some trees there, but I learned great. I had lots of highlighters and was linking resource IDs in here and trying to figure out what heavy usage was versus, it was like a crash course in learning AWS.
Wow. That's crazy. I'm trying to think back to, I was definitely one of the people that just downloaded it and tried to open it on my Mac, and it probably crashed my Mac out. And I think I was using Redshift as like the solution. And I remember, I think there was a lab on it, like a well-architected lab before. And I just converted everything into Terraform and deployed it and got it to work. And then Amazon came out with the Athena version. I was like, oh, great. I'm going to move to this one. This is a lot simpler. But really got into it and loved kind of messing around, because nobody at my previous company had even heard of it. And whoever set it up before, I don't think they'd enabled resource IDs, and they hadn't enabled hourly billing. It was daily. And so the granularity wasn't as good as it could be. So definitely learned a lot and had to like reset everything up.
Yeah, that was one of the kind of like intros into us trying to figure out how to look at the data, because they had folks that were, at my customer, all trying to open it in Excel. And they're like, if this is just unusable, I can't, I can't even open, it just crashes. So yeah. Similar story for sure.
So that's a good segue, actually. So how would you suggest people get started? So day one, they want to enable this CUR. They've heard about the cost and use report. They want to get access to all this data. Where would you point them? What would you suggest they do, Bill?
Sure. The best guide out there right now is well-architected labs, and being able to go through the series of labs to be able to enable cost and usage report with like the right settings and granularity. In most cases, we recommend doing hourly with resource IDs so that you get kind of like the most granular setup. Mm-hmm. But one of the key things to think about too is like, how is cost and usage report going to be used within the organization? Is it going to be just like one team that has access to the management account where, you have your organizations and you try to keep that protected and not really deploy any additional resources in it? Or are you going to open that up to other teams? And, the recommended path is to deploy like a governance account, so that when you start to actually like introduce this into the organization, and you need to be able to provide access to other people, teams, tech leaders, other finance groups, potentially having it in a governance account is much cleaner approach, because now you can provide access to just the governance account without giving like, overprivileged roles or permissions in the management account. So, deploy a separate governance account, configure your cost and usage report with Parquet format, hourly granularity, resource IDs, and the next piece of that is being able to replicate. There's a couple different ways that you could do it, but basically accessing it from the governance account using Athena. Right now, when it's in Parquet compression type, that is the recommended file type for Athena consumption, and then from there, you're able to use ANSI SQL to be able to actually gather data from that massive data set. So I would say, I
was just going to say, we'll come into like how to get some of that data probably in a bit. And
Yeah, no doubt.
just off your point about the governance account, I don't know, Alex, maybe you've seen this in some customers. A lot of people, and this included me when I was a customer, we didn't have a governance account. We just used the payer account. And only looking into it more and more now, we see the benefits of having it in a governance account. Alex, have you seen like a bit of a divide with customers using a governance account or just a billing account? And what do you think is working well with people?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious of what you did because you were in the customer's shoes too. But I see way more people doing a governance account. I see more born in the cloud companies asking us the appropriate way to shift things so that they have that model. Because, you know, maybe they started with 1 or 2 accounts and now they have all their usage in 1 or 2 accounts and it's not really best practices. But most customers that will have that governance account. We certainly did when I was a customer. What did you have when you were a customer?
We just had the payer. So when a lot of the payer kind of had a couple of different things in it, it had things like it had the security guys deploying stuff in it so that they could monitor everything from the organization level. We had the FinOps team in there running all the bill from it because that's where we just kind of set things up. And it wasn't until savings plans came out that we realized that, well, I realized that you probably shouldn't do that. So, I mean, we're probably going to have another episode where we cover savings plans and RIs that we haven't really done yet. But one of the best things about savings plans is they go for they want to save you money the best way possible. But if you have them in the main account and you have things like Lambda functions or compute in the main account, it will save money there first before it goes out to the rest of your organization. So what was happening is we probably weren't saving as much as we could because we were having all those Lambdas generating all our reports and stuff in the main account. But lesson learned, do it in the governance account, I think is the first point from today, key lesson. So let's, for those who've joined us, we are talking about the cost and usage report, or commonly known as the CUR. So if you have any questions or comments you want to ask, a couple of experts here who know a lot about the CUR, who've got their hands dirty working with queries and kind of diving deep into that. So please feel free to post some questions or comments, or tell us what you think of the CUR. Do you like it? Let us know. So moving on, let's talk about common use cases. So maybe, Bill, kind of top 3 common use cases that you see customers really engaging with the CUR. What would you say?
Sure. I think cross account reporting is a common one, right? If they want to be able to come up with some custom queries that are covering multiple services as well as multiple accounts, that's one. The other would be being able to look at like down to the resource ID level, right? Say for example, it's like SQS, and you have these massive spike in SQS spend, and you're like, okay, cool, I could get the region, I can get the account in Cost Explorer, but then from there, what if that account has 1,000 different queues? You need to be able to get a bit deeper to be able to identify the resource that is generating that high cost. So that's another one, just a simple example.
And to highlight, we said something earlier, is that you have to enable the resource ID. So a common thing, I think you guys might have seen this, is that people forget to enable that. And that gives you so much information into what's going on. So yeah, sorry to cut in there.
No, I mean, and that brings me to another point too, where it's like a lot of times we'll come into conversations where they don't have that, and then folks have to, recreate their report.
Definitely.
So is that a process that, like, Steph, like, in your past life, have you had to go? Did you encounter that? Right? Like, oh no, I didn't. How'd that go?
Yeah, when we had a KPMG, like I said before, somebody else had done one. I think we had a specific one set up for one customer or something weird. And then I looked at it and it was definitely set up for, I think it was in CSV, and it was like hourly and no resource IDs. It took me ages to figure out why I couldn't see the resource ID until I went back and was like, oh, whoever did this didn't do it, and then had to set it up. And it was kind of having to do months of data and just waiting for that first set of data to come in before I could start looking at it, and waiting for that first full month of billing data before I could even look at chargeback. It was crazy. What about you, Alex?
How long does it take to, like, if I went in right now, I didn't have resource IDs, I clicked enable that, how long until I would be able to see it, say, like in the cost intelligence dashboard, the resource IDs?
I think, do you have to remake it? I'm not sure if you can. You have to remake it.
You have to redo it. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, set up a whole new one, which is the most annoying thing when you see it's been collecting all this data and you're like, oh, I can use it, but I can't really use it. So you're very
and that's also like a great point too, where you see a lot of these conversations end up where like they do have that like, you know, gzip compression type. They don't have resource IDs, but we want to set up like one of these great solutions like a cost intelligence dashboard or Kudos, and they have to recreate the report. If they talk with the account team, then there are ways for us to be able to create a report and then backfill it. So that is one way to also be able to get around like kind of that painful process. Does it take time? For sure, but
yes,
you know, it's not like a lost effort, right?
Okay, so. Yeah. Just to throw in there, we've just got a question. So any tips that are unique to customers hosting multi-tenant environments in regards to the CUR? Bill, have you got any tips for that? I'm not sure if they mean multi-tenant environments. They mean different layers.
I think, you know, this is common kind of ask because in different teams, right, you might end up having like a shared services account where multiple teams might end up using like a single RDS instance or something along those lines. And it becomes challenging in those situations to be able to get like resource level or excuse me, transaction level billing. Most of the time you're looking at resource tags to be able to provide, you know, some level of distinction between the different application and team. But it is service by service, you know, so a lot of the times you're looking at a custom solution.
Cool. Okay, so I think we covered one use case already. What are some other ones that you'd recommend getting started with, Bill?
I think, you know, charge back and show back would be another one too, where you'd be able to go through and be able to just kind of do like, say if it was like savings plans and you wanted to be able to show like who consumed that savings plan, that would be a great way to be able to provide a quick report. Is that a common use case that you would see before too, like show back and attribution of cost? I think, Alex? Maybe?
Yeah, I think that's like probably the most popular that we see, right? How do I take what I'm getting in Cost Explorer and get more granular, show back and use cases that, and then tags go into play there, right? I know Steph has seen some really interesting use cases in tagging and bringing that level in. And I believe recently we talked about one where, you know, what is the commonality with tags? How deep do you get in it? And how do you let that not overrun your show back process, right, when using the CUR?
Yeah, definitely.
And we started, you know, and the other thing would be like custom visualizations. I think that's kind of the common theme that we see with solutions that we've been producing lately, where, you know, being able to have, like, it's great to have this text world where you can run SQL queries and be able to get these detailed reports, but then being able to have that as a data set to be able to build custom visualizations is super powerful. So I think those are kind of the common or top three.
And we've talked about the Kudos framework and the Well Architected Labs over and over again, and these are resources that we've linked to in the chat. Starting off, I'll show it again. This one is the kind of best starting point for getting started with the CUR and getting all set up. But they are ways of getting started that are really useful if you're not sure how to get started, because I don't know if we've really explained how we've said how granular the CUR is, and we've explained how opening an Excel can crash a laptop, but it can be millions and millions of lines long, and it could be just too daunting to even think about trying to consume just like reading it. So getting a dashboard that's spun up that's quick and easy and cheap will just kind of take away some of that complexity. So it's a kind of great starting point. So
better than printing out.
Yes, I just thinking about you doing RI chargeback with a highlighter with all this. Oh God, that's I'm just brilliant that you've mentioned that. Right, so let's talk a bit about. We've just mentioned the Well Architected Lab for the Cost Intelligence Dashboard. So the CUR Library, Bill is basically one of the founders. I think you founded it, the library. You started setting that up when I joined. I kind of got involved. Yeah. So do you want to talk a bit about what that library is, what it entails?
Sure. Yeah, me and a couple other dedicated TAMs and Steph decided that, there's this gap where we had, a lot of these conversations would come down to like, hey, can you help us get started, right? We set up our accounts, we got the cost and usage report running. How do I consume it, right? Because in most cases, it might not be clear like how to be able to structure the data or interpret it. And, internally, we just had tons of different repositories that had queries written over the years. And one of the things that we did was really try to aggregate the best of the best to be able to present to the customers in an open source repository. So the intention was to be kind of mutually beneficial, right? If they spent time, you could open up a PR with us and be able to contribute your own queries. But we have about 70 in there now, and
nice.
It's been super helpful to both internal and external to customers.
What are the most popular ones, out of curiosity? Can you tell which ones are accessed the most?
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we do have page level granularity, but I don't want to pull it up right now because I'll be sitting here staring at my screen. But there's, we have a collection of different like global queries as well as ones that cover RIs and SPs, and then breakdowns to like different services that you might not dive deep into regularly, like CloudWatch, for example. There's a ton of great information about CloudWatch usage in the cost and usage report. So, and the other thing that I've seen like kind of neat ideas too is like looking for operational type queries, right? If you wanted to get like resource counts or be able to see even resources that haven't been tagged, there's, you could end up using the cost and usage report to do that as well.
Yeah, I just saw someone said I think it was Alex, just used the CloudWatch one last week. I use the CloudWatch one all the time. I think out of the three of us, we can say that the CloudWatch one is the best one.
That's awesome.
I didn't write that one, so it's not like I'm saying it was mine, but it's so useful.
It is. It's something you don't think about all the time, and it's something that from a Cost Explorer view is a little bit harder to dig into. But yeah, I used that one, and you were giving an example about SQS earlier, and I had to dig into a customer problem and used one of the wanting to get more granular there as well.
No, it's great. Yeah, and those are perfect use cases, right? Even for like Athena, right? Some of these services are tricky to be able to get that super granular cost. So like Athena, you might be in a situation where you need to go even deeper. And what we've tried to do in the library is even include like the best of the best blog articles for that specific topic. So like for the Athena one, there's a great solution that a collection of essays and TAMs put together where it combines CloudTrail data with the Athena query history to be able to show you like this is the team and user that was incurring these charges. So the library really the intention is like a learning tool for cost and usage report. So even the CUR query help section has just a ton of information about like date filtering, understanding cost data sets. So definitely worth taking a look at.
Yeah, there's so many nuances with the CUR of trying to understand what the columns mean, because they don't necessarily match up to Cost Explorer, which is sometimes a bit painful. So that helpers file kind of helps see where you're going, and definitely the links and just the pricing information onto blog posts. As you said, the whole well-architected set of framework and labs are really important to help educate everybody. So it is just kind of building upon that. We've had a question, just going to check it up. Does it work to have an idea of CloudWatch memory metrics costs? So I think that's that question about the CloudWatch query we were just talking about. Do you know if it has any? I think it does have memory metrics.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look. We can get back to you though.
Yeah, feel free to email us about it if you want. I'll check up our emails, or tweet us about it, or just check out the lab. I recommend going in and running the query and seeing what data you get back, and just having a play with it to see what you got. What would you say, apart from the CloudWatch one, is there any queries that you think people have been asking for or in development that you're going to see coming out, Bill?
It's started to have different asks, right? About like looking at even like product portfolio type of view, right? So say if a customer's migrating and they might be doing like a lift and shift migration of an application, then they look to do like modernization and start to consume more serverless or managed service type tools. Serverless, defined in the product family, is not something of which is like a category that you can easily sort on within the cost and usage report. So like we've seen asks for people to be able to put together interesting queries like that, where it's like customized usage types along with services, so that you can get an idea of like, okay, migration started, here, and we see serverless, the modernization effort started, and we could start to see like our serverless product portfolio spend go up over time.
That's interesting.
That's that's a one right off the top of my head. But that we each month we're trying to do between 1 and 5 quality queries that get published within the library. I think Steph, you just put one out too that was super helpful, which was for premium support. You want to go into that one?
Oh yeah, the chargeback on premium support. So this was something that I looked at for KPMG and for a customer recently. And we had people, you can't see premium support charged against account because it's just charged against payer. And so people wanted to understand how much kind of proportionally people were spending on support, going off the basis that, I don't know, account A owned 10% of the bill, and then they should then pay 10% of the support fee. And that was kind of how it should work out. So there was no kind of query or way to do it. So I've created a query that please try and let us know if it works. And it works for, when I did it before, it works for the customer, but we've kind of made a way of understanding how much they've spent on that account and then distributing it. So hopefully that'll be useful to people. I've just seen another question. Let me just check this up. So how do you feel about cost categories to normalize tags like dev, development, all being mapped to development? Have you had to do much of that coming to the CUR?
No, this was actually a topic that we just started to have a discussion with at my customer, where this is the exact use case that they're looking to accomplish, right? And cost categories, I think, has been maybe not as highly adopted as it should be, but there's a lot of power to them. And the fact that they do flow into the CUR gives you this fantastic way to be able to group on multiple dimensions. So I think it's definitely a great use case.
Cool. All right. Just checking at the time, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So I'll go to Bill first and Alex. Have you got a really cool kind of like CUR story, just a brief, like 1 minute story that you want to share where there's been a real impact with a customer that you've seen? Sure.
We with my customer story, we basically use the cost and usage report and that governance account, as well as a couple different custom solutions to be able to change the mindset of the organization and start to introduce this cost-aware culture, right? And teams are really starting to think about the design of their application with cost as like a main pillar during the design phase, right? Thinking about how much is this going to cost me to run on the platform. And I think that's a mindset shift from, running on premises where you might not have metered billing, right? You don't know, right? You might oversize your instances. You might have tons of large volumes. You might have no kind of like event-driven architecture in the mix. So I think that is probably the most impactful, is really the CUR being the foundation of this cost-aware culture mind shift at a very large customer, and having 30 plus business units consuming the CUR on a weekly basis to be able to basically make sure that their costs are in check.
I'll go real quick. I just like how you can solve puzzles with it. I know it's super granular and can be a little bit overwhelming for people. It's a lot of data, but I love a good puzzle. and I love a good math puzzle. And especially using the CUR Library library, you really can find unit cost and cost of service and how much did this application cost, and it's so fun to do in that standpoint.
Awesome. All right, so that's it for us this week, guys. Just a reminder, please go check out the CUR in your organization, your account, see if it's set up, see if you can get into that data and use Athena to do it, and use the CUR query library. And if you contribute a query, you get a funky jumper or a funky cup. Next week we'll be talking about container chargeback, so we will see you then. Thanks everyone. See you next week.